Hi there, welcome to the first Noticias Newswire and Hispanic PR blog, Hispanic Marketing Webinar for Hispanic Heritage Month. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bill Gato. I'm the CEO of Noticias Newswire and also the co-editor of the Hispanic PR blog. Noticias Newswire is the only Latino-owned press release distribution service focusing on the niche U.S. Hispanic market. Okay, and then the Hispanic PR blog has been around since 2009. It was sort of on hiatus for a couple of years. We're bringing it back now. It's our official trade blog. It's part of the. It's our sister company. So, okay. Today's webinar is Inteligencia Cultural, developing better strategies to reach the booming Hispanic market. I'm honored to have two incredible guests today, Kathy Bloomgarden, the CEO of Reuter Finn, and Gloria Rodriguez, the CEO of Comunicad. And they recently merged in May. So milestone there. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, but also, the intention is to make this just a action, just actionable advice packed webinar for PR professionals that are either already in the Hispanic market or, working in the Hispanic market, or they are in the general market and want to learn more about the Hispanic market and how to properly target us, right? So, hi, Kathy and Gloria, welcome. Thank you for your time today. So, congratulations on the recent merger. And for those of you who may not know your backgrounds, can you both share a little bit about your backgrounds? Kathy, you're the daughter, and I didn't know this until I began doing my prep for this webinar. You're the daughter of David Finn, the founder of Reuter Finn. Your dad founded the agency in 1948. Gloria, you launched Comunicad in 1985, one of the first Hispanic PR firms. So two pioneers here. Really honored to have you both here today on this webinar. So can you share a little bit about your backgrounds, and then I'll go into the first question. Kathy, maybe you first.
Okay, well, thank you, Bill, and I'm really delighted to be here today at an important time. It's a Hispanic Heritage Month, so it's great, very timely that you're starting your webinar series. And also want to thank you for the great work that you do and the important contributions you make to the Hispanic community. And to those of us who really believe in raising the voice of the Hispanic community. So Reuter Finn was one of the first PR agencies ever created, actually. I think we're nearing our 75th anniversary, actually. So we're really, it's really a tradition for us to try to be a pioneer in the field. And so we are really looking for always where we can make a difference. And we feel that the Hispanic community is a priority, both for America and for Reuter Finn. We want to play an important role. And hence, I'll talk a little bit about how delighted I was to meet Gloria. So I think that Reuter Finn, in terms of its roots, its size, we're a global agency, and this is a very, very important addition to our agency and where we want to focus our energies in the future. And over to you,
Gloria, are you in Austin still? Because you were at the HPA.
I'm still in Austin.
You're still. That's what I figured. She's got to be in Austin. She was there last night.
I stayed here so I could be in a set place, for this. I came out of the world of journalism, Bill, and it was nice to see last night that there's so many journalists as part of the Hispanic Public Relations Association that are looking at their futures as well. And, and possibly either continuing in journalism or launching, into the PR world, which is fantastic. I started the company after I left Fox Media way back and decided that the best way for me to be able to continue in the communications industry was actually to start working with public relations, and public affairs type client needs. And that would also be the way for me to be able to stay true to my Hispanic heritage. It was very important for me at that time. Hispanics were called, they were the burgeoning market, which really didn't turn out to be until after the 90s. But I was there. I wanted to be able to help my community in some way or the other. And I felt that this was the best way that I would have the liberty to do that.
Fantastic. Kathy, I'd like to start with you, the first question. And it's really about the merger. I mean, a lot of us are aware of these big stats about the growth of the Hispanic market, the 1.5 million or trillion buying power. the 63 million Latinos based on the latest census data. You know, the general market knows that it's growing. Were there other stats that you were seeing? And I know you're a research freak. Based on the the research I did about you, you got your start at Reuter Finn in the research department. What stats were you seeing that made you say, I'm not just going to target this market, I'm going to actually acquire a leading Hispanic PR firm? Just curious.
So I would say that what was important to us was we wanted to embrace this audience and a very important segment of the population. When I think that the Hispanic voice is very underappreciated, I think it deserves a far greater share of voice in our dialogue today. And if you look at the data, some people estimate that almost 70% of economic growth can be linked back to the Hispanic market. Over half or a little over half of new housing is actually purchased by Hispanics. New business starts, similarly, a similar statistic. And perhaps most interesting, the average age in the Hispanic market is about 11, as compared to much older in the general population, which means that the Hispanic market is the future. So I think that what I wanted to do and was really looking for a way, just like Gloria just said that she wanted to play a role for her community and make a difference. We wanted Reuter Finn, given our heritage and our traditions, we wanted to play a role in really helping the Hispanic community. And you said something really interesting, Bill, when you were talking about what you do. You said, serving this niche market. And I would argue that the market is going to become mainstream. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's going to move with these kind of statistics to be a very central plank of how the U.S. is going to move forward. And we can really be helpful in really furthering, again, the proper voice, the proper understanding, the opening up opportunities. I think that's really what we were hoping to achieve with our coming together with Gloria and her colleagues.
And was there like a specific campaign that you were familiar with that came out of Comunicad that you were like, wow, this is just blew you away? Then said, or were you guys already partner agencies?
We were partners, and I had talked to quite a lot of agencies actually who were specialized in the Hispanic market. And then I met Gloria, and she really blew everybody else away. She was, so passionate. She was so thoughtful. She just was such a great cultural fit with Reuter Finn, and our purpose and aspirations to really make a difference. And I connected so well, like in the first few minutes of meeting Gloria. And we just said, wow, this is just so perfect for us to work together. And then I met her colleagues and her team, all of them so special in their own ways, and had been with Gloria for a really long time. Gloria had nurtured them, mentored them. They've each had very special qualities and expertise. And it was really a perfect match and a very impressive group. So I was really excited. And we've spread that excitement through our agency. I think, as Gloria, could see when she first came, I guess she was wondering what it would be like to be part of a larger firm, but everyone was so excited to meet her and, reaching out to her and trying to include her in programming and asking for ideas. And so it's really been a wonderful coming together, and I hope we can together really stand out amongst the agency world for continuing that purpose that Gloria just outlined, which is to make a difference to the Hispanic community.
Gloria, I'd love to hear a little bit from you about the merger. I saw an interview that you did with PR Week, and they were, you said that one of the things that it's obvious that when you merge with a company like Reuter Finn, you suddenly have access to a lot of resources. How are you planning to leverage that for the for Comunicad?
Well, we're already in that process. We hit the ground running, and as Kathy said, when we met, I felt that it was time for us to cross over. I really felt that this was the home that we were looking for to cross over because of the resources that Reuter Finn has, which it would have been almost impossible for us to build them, would take years. And the access to platforms, to corporate platforms that would then allow us to engage the Latino community in a broader, reach, if you will. We also felt that joining Reuter Finn would amplify our mission because we could reach so many more, and we were ready for that. Um, the efficiency of the in-house resources and the whole thing about leveraging their talent and so forth and so on is is history now for us and for the staff. We now are able to do things in a much broader way than before, in a quicker way, if you will, because of their infrastructure and because of their human capital. We can forecast trends. We can prepare strategies that bridge the cultural gaps. And when we're also have the ability to be able to impact the whole DE&I fundamentals, which, as you well know, Bill, this is the whole trend of the future. If we don't start pushing in on the whole DE&I infrastructure of corporations, they're going to lose the beat of the market as we grow, speaking to what Kathy said about our growth, our future growth. So we feel that our team is now better positioned, if you will, to proactively um, recognize multicultural market shifts, to leverage cultural differences, and do better business as a result.
Okay, we're like 11 minutes into the webinar, and before we get into like hardcore insights, research strategies, can you comment one last thing, Gloria, about in terms of Comunicad, what do you feel made you guys different, gave you a competitive edge over other Hispanic PR firms? Just curious.
Oh, that's easy. Cultural intelligence. We based our lives from the very beginning. I can't say to you that we just started last year or 2 years ago when the whole thing of cultural intelligence and so forth became a very popular term. From the very beginning of the company, cultural intelligence was our guide. We knew that we could not service that community, that we could not provide to corporate America, to our clients, the ins into that community, unless we use cultural intelligence as our beam and gave that to our clients. And by cultural intelligence, is basically understanding the community beyond just knowing the language. We come from 25 different countries plus. We're all different. We're not a monolithic community, and we all have to understand that, and we all have to approach the different communities within the Hispanic communities in their own language, if you will. And that's what made us stand out from the crowd.
I could do a whole webinar on just that aspect of how you started doing research, and back in the 80s when it probably didn't exist, you had to commission a lot of.
It didn't, but we were true, back to what I said at the beginning, but we were true to servicing our community on their own terms and to portraying them to the rest of the world as the unique population that they are, and what they would be contributing to the United States as their growth burgeoned, which we knew was happening, and we knew it would be even greater.
Okay, Kathy, I've just got to ask this because I looked around, I didn't see anybody really ask you this question. I know you have you were one of the pioneers that went to Asia like maybe 25 years ago, and you opened up the Ruderfin operations in Asia. You speak Mandarin. You majored in, I think, Chinese languages and things like that, and political science as well. How did that experience of living and opening up PR divisions in Asia, how is that kind of influencing your approach to working with the Hispanic market, working with Comunicad? What lessons can you share from that experience with other Hispanic PR professionals? Just curious.
Yeah, so it goes back to what Gloria just said, which is on their own terms. I love that, Gloria. I think that the cultural intelligence platform, which Gloria just laid out, is really fundamentally the basis of going, global, because, we Americans, I would say, sometimes some of us come with our, think we're going to bring our own value system, and then why aren't we successful, right? So I think the most important thing is to be sensitive and base everything you're doing on the cultural insights And, especially, if we look at Asia, the Chinese market is different from, the Singaporean market is different from the Indian market. It's not one, like Gloria just said, it's not one size fits all. You do have to be extremely sensitive, and you have to be a good listener, and you have to be really willing to, take a whole new lens, really set aside some preconceived notions that you have based on the American, cultural gestalt, and move towards something which is really rooted in the local perspective and the local, value system, which is so very distinct, in the Hispanic community.
Okay. Gloria, you mentioned something earlier about how there's a historic opportunity right now because of the whole focus on DEI and ESG, and that Hispanic marketers, brands need to sort of leverage the budgets that might be available right now. How do they do that? What are the first steps? What can you share with Hispanic PR professionals and marketers about how to begin leveraging those budgets, that focus that's there now, that priority that's there now?
Well, first of all, I truly believe that corporate America needs to understand DE&I from not a very singular perspective, but to really widen their vision of what DE&I means, and as it applies to many different cultural groups and not just to one cultural group. As they do this, this needs to happen because in order for them to be able to service their consumers of the future, they've got to be able to then look and feel like those consumers as well. They have to be able to demonstrate that they've done something in their organizations. And by that something, I mean they've taken away biases towards these communities, if you will. Then what you have then on the other side from the PR professionals and so forth and so on is that the PR professionals need to be emphasizing that even more, need to be asking, as we do DE&I campaigns, what does your corporation look like? Because those questions are going to be asked by the communities sooner or later. So we all have to be, on that same sort of page, if you will, in which, yes, we can do DE&I, but our communities are not foolish, and they will understand those corporations that have really taken this on and challenge themselves and are working and expanding within it, versus the ones that just give you lip service and they say, oh yes, we have, we want you to buy our products, but we don't really feel that we need to look more like you or whatever to be able to do that. So those are differences that are coming up, and that's where our PR professionals need to take heed and need to be talking to corporate America a lot more about this and helping them, if you will, in this endeavor to grow.
Along those lines, Gloria, there's a slide that your team shared, which was it touched on that point. The discrepancy in terms of the numbers, in terms of the population versus the workforce. Like this one right here, Latino leaders represent only 2.3% of the board members of companies on the Russell 3000 index. This number here just shocked me. 48% of non-Latinos said they believe Hispanics are employed primarily as farm workers or laborers. So can you speak a little bit to these some of these numbers that and in relation to the DEI priorities?
Well, right now, and I'm sure you're aware of this, Bill, there are two, in fact, but there's one that's more well known. Organizations, Latino organizations, that are dealing with this whole problem in terms of representation of Latinos on corporate boards. This has become an urgent call for them, and they are working with a lot of the search firms, executive search firms and so forth and so on, to try to start really putting a big remedy onto this. The lack of knowledge of our Latino communities is incredible. For instance, people don't understand. We come from 26 different countries. And even though we all speak Spanish, our Spanish in some of our countries is a little bit different, and a word, you know, as you well know, a word in Puerto Rico may not mean the same thing in Argentina. So, at Comunicad, we've always said we speak general Spanish precisely because of that, because we are servicing the entire Latino community. So we have to be very aware of all of that, okay, in order to be able to reach out to them. Um, the the lack of having Hispanics in positions of power, more corporations in the United States does not help um, the knowledge of Latinos and who Latinos are and so forth and so on, and how they impact the branding of the corporation does not help at all. So the more the more workers we are able to put in positions of power in the corporations, the more readily available will it be that mutual cooperation between communities and businesses, corporate America, if you will. For instance, one of the things that I really admire about Rudder Finn, and Kathy in particular, is the fact that Kathy is really, really dedicated to this at Rudder Finn. And so it has to come from the top, which is what certainly doesn't happen in a lot of corporate America. It's not coming from the top. You have a lot of Latinos employed in management jobs or whatever that then don't have the power to be able to make the moves that they need to do inside the corporation. Comunicad has served as doing that for many, many years. Because as I always would say, we were the innocent ones. We came in as media, and the first thing that I would always ask would be, and who does your corporate contributions? And the reason I always did that is because we felt that if we could get into that arena, we could then help provide the things that the Latino community needed to be able to progress even further. And one of those things, as you well know, Bill, is education. So we've dedicated a lot of the resources of the corporate clients that we've had to the whole education, to the whole, getting our kids to graduate from college, from high schools first, and now and colleges. So we need to put Latinos in more positions of power, decision-making positions in corporate America, to enable the change that is needed for the market development that is coming.
Gloria, over the years, do you feel you've been able to influence that? Like when you've talked with the brands at a strategic level, and you've brought this point up, look, it's not enough to just work with us. It's not enough to target us. You need to actually staff up. Do you feel like you've been able to, like they've taken your advice to heart and actually done that? Do you feel like you've been able to influence that?
I've been able to do it with some, Bill. I admit I haven't been successful in all. And those that we were not successful with in terms of this, saw it in terms of the campaigns and so forth and so on that they wanted to follow versus the ones that we recommended. I mean, we've had, and you know this from knowing the industry, there have been campaigns out there that actually, instead of drawing in the public, they actually insult the public by using certain words or idioms of the language that are insulting versus helping get that community to follow your brand. I mean, we know one of our clients a few years ago refused to take out a word that we said should not be used, and it was a $25 million campaign which they lost because at the end they had to remove it because the community riled up in such a way that the company had to pull itself back, and they lost $25 million in the process.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting case study there. Kathy, any thoughts on the DEI, movement that's happening right now? Any suggestions for other brands that may not be in a position to acquire an agency, but want to move in that direction? Any suggestions?
So I would just start by saying that I do think there are additional reasons why this is a moment in time. Here we are in a very uncertain economy. No one knows where the world is going and where economic growth is going to end up. And I would argue to companies that we're working with that, they shouldn't just think of reaching out to the Hispanic community as, extra funds that they might park for a CSR initiative, if they happen to have any funds left over. I think what's really important is that this is really an engine for growth. This is a must do. This is something that's going to be vital for companies in many different sectors in order to be themselves to be successful. So it's not a charity that you're actually giving to a segment of the population. It's actually really understanding the potential and the possibilities that really do meet with the aspirations of the Hispanic community as it grows, becomes more prosperous, starts its own businesses, buys its own homes, etc. And as the young people move into a greater portion of the population. So I think it's very important to fundamentally shift the kind of attitude that the corporate sector has about the Hispanic community, and really position it as really, this is a win-win. There's nothing here that's kind of nice to do. This is really an essential plank for every company considering its economic growth and its strategy for the future.
Thank you, Kathy. Gloria, you were talking earlier about having access to platforms, and when you guys first reached out to me, you were suggesting some topic ideas, and this whole idea of the way U.S. Hispanics, like the Gen Zs, they over-index on social media consumption, social media usage. Can you share a little bit about some recent campaigns where you've been able to just improve the reach through new platforms that Rudolphin brought in, or recent campaigns maybe before the merger where you guys were like really savvy about the targeting on social media? Just curious.
Well, we've been targeting social media now for a long time. I remember that in far back as 2006, we started looking at phones, at our telephones, and we started saying, wow, this is where our community is going to go, because our community is young, and this is what they like, and this is what they'll be able to manage, from their hands and from wherever they're going. And at that time, we got involved with a company that actually was they sold phones, and we told them, and we had fairs where young Latinos would go to, because we kept saying, this is the generation. At the time, you're looking at millennials and so forth and so on that were coming up. So this is the population that's going to use them. So we've got to get them used to it now, because in the future, 25 years from now, this is how we're going to talk to each other, right? This is the way that the internet is going, if you will. And now it's the way the metaverse is going. So we have believed in that digital age for our Latinos, and the fact that they're young. Look at our Gen Zers. Our Gen Zers are almost 20% of the population. And that is very important, because that is where we can communicate with them. It's no longer sitting in front of a TV set and seeing an ad or whatever. It's actually, it's that, and it's the influencers, because they relate. This is one way that Latinos relate, our human connections, our families, and so forth and so on. We believe, and we are tied to that human connection. And so what this digital age provides to them, for the Gen Zers in particular, that you're communicating through influencers as well, is that is the human connection that they have, which sometimes is much, much, much higher than a connection beyond the family values part of it that they have with the elder Hispanic community.
One of my questions was about the faulty assumptions that certain brands or general market agencies make when they try to reach the Hispanic market, but I think you just touched upon that. Any other thoughts or about some of the faulty thinking among some of the C-suite of certain brands when they first approach the market?
Well, one of the biggest problems that the C-suites have is considering that what I touched upon earlier, that the Latino community is monolithic. It is not. And obviously, they want to go after the young audiences, and there they have to be, they're English dominant. Our Gen Zers are English dominant.
Right.
So we have to speak in that language. And you, Bill, that know this market so well, you know that a few years ago, 5 years ago, this wasn't being done, really. It wasn't even really being thought of. But that we speak in Spanish and English. I don't know. I'm sure you've seen all these some new ads. Some new companies have been coming out with new ads, which I really applaud, because I'm looking at them and all of a sudden they're doing Spanglish, or they're speaking in Spanish and they go into English, and they go from English then, and full English, so that you can have an ad, a TV ad, or a digital ad that is talking to you, that you have in front of you, members of the older, of the Hispanic older community and the members of the young community, and then they're switching back and forth. Well, this is very natural for us. As you well know, in our homes now, if we have the younger population in our homes, this is what happens. We're speaking in two languages, and sometimes we're speaking, yes, in Spanglish, which is our language, our mutual language. So my thoughts for the C-suite is that they open up their minds a little bit more, their brains, if you will, and also their knowledge. They bring in people who are really knowledgeable about this, and who don't want to go in just to do a campaign to earn the money and so forth and so on. That they really have the community, as their purpose. Because if you have PR agencies that really see the community, the good that this community is bringing to our nation, they will do good for that community. We work a lot with one of our big things, and from the beginning, one of our big things has been that we work with community organizations, because we need to build trust. We needed to build trust. I'm glad to say I'm happy, and this is one of the things that I thank my staff every day for, because we do it on a daily basis, that we reach out to that community and we help them in need. Right now, Bruder Finn is helping with the with pro bono time for helping Puerto Rico, after the hurricane. So this is one of the things that we all really have to do more of and learn more of, and that we reach out to our community leaders, to our community organizations. It is through them that we will acquire the trust of the community. We can't do it without them.
Fantastic. We're at the 33-minute marks, and I want to respect your time because we allotted half an hour. If I could just ask one more question for either of you. We had talked about the subtle nuances between Gen Z and millennials, Hispanic Gen Z and millennials. One of the stats that you guys shared with me was that 50% of Hispanic millennials mention brands that they like through posts, and they add hashtags. Any tips that you can share about how to leverage that research in campaigns, in the community outreach? Just curious, any specific campaigns that you can speak to regarding that stat?
Well, I'll just start, and then I'll turn it over to Gloria, who's much more rooted in this. Give her time to think about some of the great campaigns that she shared with me. But I think the very value-oriented approach to campaigns is very important. I think that the population in general is moving toward selecting brands that they think are socially responsible or represent their own personal values. I mean, Gloria referred to the fact that personal and relevant is very important. And I think that the two things that I would stress are that, those family values, the children, the aspects are, should be really very, very visible in terms of campaigns that reach out to the Hispanic community. And secondly, I think the local, Gloria alluded to it, the local influencers, not just these sort of mega influencers that people, tennis stars and other kinds of people that are ordinarily selected by marketing campaigns, but rather more grassroots representatives that people can relate to in their own communities is really powerful. And channels that are maybe not Facebook or Twitter, but are more like TikTok, where you can have that personal expression. So I think that the way you approach the Hispanic community is very much of our times. We feel like we're all moving toward these more creative channels, more personal relevance, more value orientation, more mobile. These are all things the Hispanic community has already adopted. So in some way, we can look to what the future is going to look like by understanding the Hispanic community. And I know that Gloria referred to a program just before where a word had to be deleted, but she's also explained how she's, sold cars by focusing more on family values. So yeah, I turn it back to Gloria for sharing a bit more insights.
Yeah, one of the things, I'm glad you reminded me of that, Kathy, because one of the things that, and this is an example that you were looking for earlier, Bill, in terms of a campaign. A lot of children, Latino children, were dying on the highways, if you will, because of accidents. And the government couldn't understand why this was happening. Because there were car seats available, the whole works. Anyway, to make a very long story very short, we designed a campaign for an automaker, and because they wanted to know how they could reach that community better. So we designed this campaign that essentially was based on family values. We knew that priests are very important in our community. We also knew that mothers and family members tended not to put their children in car seats because they were too far away from them, that it was better for them to hold them in their arms.
Wow.
So you know what that would mean then if you have an accident. So we designed a campaign basically that the night before we were giving away car seats, and the night before we would have an orientation with the family members who, in order to get the car seat, they needed to come to this orientation, in which we would have a priest at the orientation, and we would have actually, the experts on car seats and so forth and so on. We would talk about it, and then as we ended it, the priest would bless the car seats.
Wow.
And designate each car seat, right, for that family. The next day, the family would come, and we would have the fire department of the city or the state, whatever, would come and install the car seats for them. And the priest would then again, throw holy water on the car seats. And we were able, with that campaign, to make a lot of changes in terms of the use of car seats for children in the Latino community. But you notice what we did was we used the cultural relevance to the community in order to be able to assuage a problem that we were having in this country on the highways. So it's being able to do that, and you're able then to leverage that. But in terms of, as we look at the future, that's why I said earlier that influencers are so important, because Gen Zers as well as millennials, are paying a lot of attention to our influencers, our Latino influencers, if you will. So utilizing them in campaigns, we need to see the Gen Zers as future consumers and our future employees. They will be the workforce of tomorrow, and we need to have that really, in mind as we head towards that future. Brands need community engagement that resonate with their mission and their business models. This whole thing about the car seats I just explained to you, that's what that was all about. And the consistent commitments to DE&I that not only focuses on the hiring practices, but also create an environment where Latinos can thrive in those organizations.
So that is so cool. And Gloria, is that coming from research that shows that Latinos sort of over-index in they look up to authority figures, doctors, lawyers, I guess
Yes.
priests in this case, a little more than the general market we kind of
Yes, they do, and because they rely on family values as well. I mean, no matter, you see our younger generation will care for their abuela or their abuelo, and they will see it as a natural thing. They don't see it as something that, oh man, I have to do this now. No, this is my abuela, this is my grandmother, and my mother isn't here now, so I need to be here. So it's the whole family value, the whole cultural um, uh, nuance that we're smacked right in the middle of. And and this is one of the great things and the lovely things about our community is that we hold on to those values, and they're important to us no matter how long it's been that we left our original countries or whatever. We carry them into the US and we sustain them in the US, and the community needs to be looked at more in terms of preserving the cultural values through those values that we bring in.
Fantastic. And this reminds me, Kathy, I saw an interview where you said that someone had told you the phrase culture eats strategy for lunch. And you were like, I forgot who told me that, but it was like, wow, what a cool idea. And it reminds me of what Gloria, that whole case study that you just shared right now. Yeah. You can sit in a boardroom and come up with all kinds of strategies, but it's like, if you know the culture, a lot of the ideas come just from knowing the culture really well. So.
Yeah, and the strategy will fail, as Gloria pointed out from that advertising example, if it's not based in culture.
Yeah.
Yes. Fantastic. We're at the 41-minute mark. I really appreciate your additional time and the all of your time today. And I could talk to you both for hours. But any parting words for this webinar? Any actionable advice for Hispanic marketing professionals? Brand managers who are
I would
targeting
just say, next time you introduce it, Bill, just say the mainstream Hispanic population that I'm serving.
Okay. I'll do that, Kathy.
I ditto that. This is the population you need to look at, because this is the population that is going to be in the positions. They're going to be your workforce, and this is very important to everybody. And they're going to be the people who will be leading this nation as well.
Fantástico. So, thank you, ladies. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gracias, Bill.
Take care. Thank you.